The ship landed with a soft hiss on the purple grass of planet Dracarys. Sergeant Ta Kim was the first to step out. He breathed in the strange air. It smelled like cinnamon and metal. His boots sank slightly into the soft ground as he looked around. "All clear," he said into his helmet mic. "Team, move out." 5 more soldiers walked out of the ship. They wore dark blue armor with the Earth Defense Force symbol on their chests. Each carried a plasma rifle and wore a pack full of supplies. Dr. Jisoo Park came out last. She did not wear armor, only a science uniform with many pockets. She held a scanner that made soft beeping sounds. "The air is safe to breathe," she said with a smile. She took off her mask and sniffed. Fascinating. Todd kept his mask on. 20 years as a soldier had taught him to be careful. "Keep your masks on until we set up camp," he told the team. "That's an order." The planet looked like Earth in some ways. It had trees and grass, but the colors were wrong. The grass was purple, and the trees had blue trunks with red leaves. The sky was a pale green color with 2 small moons visible even in daylight. "Our job is simple," Ta said to his team as they gathered around. "We check if this place is safe for the colony ships that will come in 6 months. We look for dangers. We make maps. We study the alien life. And we try not to get eaten," said Bach, the youngest soldier. The others laughed. Tai did not laugh. "The scans show large life forms in this area, the Dracori. They look like dragons from old Earth stories, but they are smart. They build cities and use tools. They may have early space travel. We watch them, but we do not talk to them yet. Those are our orders." The team set up camp near the edge of a forest. They built small shelters and set up a force field around the area. The field would keep out animals and hide them from view. Dr. Park studied her scanner with excitement. "There's a group of Dracori about 5 kilometers east. Should we go look?" Ta nodded. "Bach, Min, and Sung, stay here and guard the camp. Dr. Park, Jun, and I will go check out these dragons." They moved quietly through the forest. Tai led the way, his rifle ready. Jun watched their backs. Dr. Park walked between them, her eyes on her scanner. "Stop," Ta whispered after an hour of walking. He pointed ahead. Through the trees, they saw a clearing. In it stood 3 large creatures that looked like dragons. They had 4 legs, long necks, wings folded against their sides, and long tails. Their scales were dark green with blue spots. Each one was about the size of a small truck. The Dracori were cutting down trees with tools that looked like glowing axes. They worked together, speaking in deep, rumbling voices. "They're beautiful," Dr. Park whispered. She lifted her scanner to record them. The device made a small sound. One of the Dracori lifted its head and looked in their direction. "Don't move," Ta whispered. The dragon-like creature stared at the bushes where they hid. It took a step toward them, its yellow eyes narrowed. Then it stopped and looked up at the sky. The other 2 also looked up. They made worried sounds and quickly gathered their tools. "Something scared them," Jun said. Dr. Park's scanner began to beep loudly. She tried to turn it off, but it kept beeping. "Energy spike," she said, her voice shaking. "Something big is coming. Something very big." The ground began to shake. The 3 Dracori dropped their tools and ran away into the forest. "We should go too," Jun said, his face pale. Tai was about to agree when they heard a crash behind them. Trees fell as something huge moved through the forest toward them. "Run!" Ta shouted. "Back to camp." They ran, jumping over fallen logs and pushing through bushes. The ground shook harder with each passing second. Whatever was following them was getting closer. Dr. Park tripped on a root and fell. Her scanner flew from her hand and broke against a rock. Tai stopped and ran back to help her up. As he pulled her to her feet, the trees behind them were pushed aside. A massive dragon stepped into view. It was 3 times larger than the Dracori they had seen earlier. Its scales were pure white, shining like pearls in the sunlight. Its eyes were pink, and they glowed with anger and intelligence. An albino, Dr. Park whispered in awe. The reports said they were rare and special. The white dragon looked straight at them. It opened its mouth, showing teeth as long as Ta's arm. It made a sound that was half roar, half word. "Go," Ta said to Dr. Park, "and June run to camp. I'll hold it off." "But," Dr. Park began. "That's an order," Ta shouted. He lifted his rifle and fired a warning shot over the dragon's head. The albino dragon roared in fury. It spread its huge wings, making it look even bigger. Jun grabbed Dr. Park's arm and pulled her away. They ran toward the camp while Tai fired more warning shots to keep the dragon's attention on him. The huge creature watched the others flee, then focused on Ta. It took a step toward him, its pink eyes glowing brighter. Ta backed away slowly. He did not want to kill the dragon if he didn't have to. His orders were to avoid conflict, but he also needed to protect his team. The dragon suddenly charged. Tai turned and ran as fast as he could. He dodged between trees, trying to use the forest to slow the much larger creature. He heard trees crashing down behind him as the dragon smashed through them. It was gaining on him. Tai's helmet radio crackled. "Sergeant Kim, we're under attack." It was Bok's voice, full of fear. "More dragons, smaller ones. They came out of nowhere. The ship, they're destroying the ship." Tai cursed. He needed to get back to camp, but he couldn't lead this huge white dragon straight to his team. He changed direction, running away from the camp. The albino dragon followed, roaring in what sounded almost like words. For a moment, Tai thought he heard a female voice in his head saying, "Invader." But that couldn't be right. He ran until his lungs burned. The forest ended at the edge of a cliff. Ta stopped just in time to avoid falling off. Below was a river, at least 30 meters down. He turned to face the dragon, his back to the cliff. The massive white creature stepped out of the forest. It moved more slowly now, as if it knew he was trapped. The dragon's pink eyes stared into his. Again, Ta thought he heard a voice in his head. "Why are you here? What do you want with my world?" "I'm imagining things," Ta muttered to himself. The lack of oxygen on this planet must be affecting his mind. His radio crackled again. "Sergeant, Min is down. The ship is destroyed. We can't." The voice cut off. The albino dragon came closer. It lowered its head until its face was just meters from Ta. He could feel its hot breath on his skin. Tai aimed his rifle at the dragon's eye. If he was going to die, he would go down fighting. The dragon opened its mouth. Ta saw blue energy gathering in its throat. He had a split second to decide. Stay and die, or... Tai turned and jumped off the cliff just as the dragon released a blast of blue energy. The heat of it scorched his back as he fell. He hit the water hard. The cold shock nearly made him pass out. The current pulled him downstream, away from the dragon. As the water carried him away, Tai looked back. The albino dragon stood at the top of the cliff, watching him. It spread its enormous wings. The hunt had begun. The river carried Ta for almost 2 kilometers before he managed to grab onto a fallen tree and pull himself to shore. He lay on the purple grass, breathing hard. His armor was damaged, and his left arm hurt badly. He had lost his rifle in the river. "This is Sergeant Kim," he said into his helmet radio. "Anyone copy?" Static was the only answer. He tried 3 more times before giving up. Either his radio was broken, or there was no one left to answer. Tai checked his survival pack. He still had a water filter, some food bars, a small medical kit, a knife, and a hand-sized energy pistol with 12 shots. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He looked up at the sky. The green color was turning darker as the sun began to set. The 2 small moons were brighter now. He needed to find shelter before night came. Ta walked away from the river, wincing at the pain in his arm. He found a small cave in a hillside and crawled inside. It wasn't deep, but it would hide him from view. He used the medical kit to wrap his arm, then ate half a food bar. As he chewed, he thought about his team. Were they alive? Had any of them escaped the attack on the camp? He had to find out. But first, he needed to rest. Sleep came in short bursts. Every sound made him wake up and reach for his pistol. The night creatures of Dracarys made strange calls that echoed through the darkness. When morning came, Ty left the cave. He needed to get back to camp, or at least to higher ground where his radio might work. He started walking, using the position of the sun to guide him. By midday, he reached a tall hill. From the top, he could see for many kilometers in all directions. The camp should have been visible, but he saw no sign of it or the ship. What he did see made his blood run cold. A large white shape was moving across the landscape. Following the river, the albino dragon was tracking him. She should have given up by now, Tom muttered. He watched as the dragon stopped and lifted its head, sniffing the air. Ta ducked down quickly. The dragon turned its head toward the hill where he was hiding. It had picked up his scent. He didn't wait to see more. He ran down the other side of the hill and into a dense patch of blue-trunked trees. Behind him, he heard the heavy footsteps of the dragon getting closer. For the next 3 days, the pattern was the same. Todd would run and hide, find a place to rest for a few hours, and then the white dragon would find him again. He was always one step ahead, but never far enough to truly escape. On the 4th day, Todd found something strange. In a small clearing stood a stone structure that looked like a shrine. It had carvings of dragons and strange symbols. Near it was a pool of clear water. Todd was very thirsty. He approached the pool carefully, checking for traps or animals. Finding none, he knelt and used his filter to drink. As he drank, he saw something reflected in the water. He looked up quickly. The albino dragon stood at the edge of the clearing, watching him. It was the closest she had been since the cliff. Her white scales shimmered in the sunlight. Ty drew his energy pistol, but didn't fire. The dragon wasn't attacking. It just stood there, head tilted slightly, pink eyes fixed on him. "What do you want?" Ty asked, knowing the dragon couldn't understand him. To his shock, he heard a voice in his head again. "Why are you here, Star Traveler?" Ty almost dropped his pistol. You can speak in my mind." The dragon's eyes glowed brighter. "I am Neri, guardian of the Eastern Territories. You and your kind trespass on sacred land." "We meant no harm," Ta said, wondering if he was going crazy, talking to a dragon. "We came to study this world." "To take it, you mean?" the voice in his head said. "Like all invaders." "No, to learn. To maybe live alongside your people someday." The dragon, Nari, made a sound like laughter. "My people would eat yours for the evening meal." She took a step forward. Tad raised his pistol. "You've had many chances to kill me," he said. "Why chase me for days instead?" Nari stopped. Her tail swished back and forth, like a cat about to pounce. "You are different. You face danger to protect others. You fire warning shots instead of killing blows. I wish to understand before I decide your fate." Ta lowered his pistol slightly. "My team. Are they alive?" "The other star travelers escaped in a flying machine. Small and silver. It went up to your bigger ship in orbit." Nari's mental voice had a tinge of disgust. "Cowards, leaving you behind." Relief flooded through Ta. They had made it to the emergency shuttle. They were safe. "They followed orders," he said. "I told them to run." Nari moved closer, her massive body making the ground shake slightly. "That is what I do not understand. Why sacrifice yourself?" Before Tai could answer, a loud roar came from the forest. Nari's head snapped around, her eyes narrowing. "We must leave," her voice said in his mind. "Now." "We?" Tai asked. More roars sounded, closer this time. Through the trees, Ta saw movement. Green and blue scales. More dragons, at least 5 of them. The clan of deep waters, Neri said. They hunt me. And now, they will hunt you too. They hate all outsiders. Why would they hunt you? You're an albino. I thought your kind were special here. Neri's mental voice turned bitter. Special, yes. Prized. Controlled. I refuse to be their puppet. For that, I am outcast. The other dragons were getting closer. Tai could hear trees breaking as they pushed through the forest. Run or fight, Neri said. Choose quickly, human. Tai looked at his small pistol, then at the approaching dragons. It wasn't much of a choice. Run, he said. But I can't outrun dragons. Neri lowered her body to the ground. Climb on my back, between the spines. Tai stared in disbelief. You want me to ride you? Unless you prefer to be eaten, she replied. The first of the enemy dragons broke through the tree line. It was smaller than Neri, but still twice the size of an earth elephant. It roared when it saw them. Tai didn't wait any longer. He ran to Neri's side and climbed onto her back, finding a spot between two large white spines where he could hold on. Hold tight, her voice warned in his head. Neri spread her massive wings and leaped into the air. The force pushed Ta flat against her scales. Wind rushed past as they shot upward, just as the enemy dragons charged into the clearing. Ta looked down and saw the angry dragons becoming smaller as Neri flew higher. Their roars faded with distance. They can't fly, he asked, shouting over the wind. Not all Dracori have that gift, Neri replied in his mind. The clan of deep waters lost their wings generations ago. They hate those who can still touch the sky. They flew over forests and plains. Ta saw herds of strange animals running below. In the distance, he spotted what looked like a city, tall structures built into the side of a mountain. Is that your home? He asked. Once, Neri said. Now nowhere is home. She began to descend toward a rocky area with many caves. As they landed, Ta noticed something he hadn't seen before, dark patches on Neri's white scales. Not dirt, but wounds. You're hurt, he said as he slid off her back. Neri turned her massive head to look at him. It does not matter. It does to me, Ta said. I have medical supplies. Not much, but maybe it will help. The dragon's pink eyes studied him with curiosity. Why would you help the one who hunted you? Ta shrugged. Maybe for the same reason you saved me from those other dragons. For a long moment, Neri was silent. Then her mental voice returned, softer than before. Perhaps human, we are both mysteries to each other. The cave was large enough for Neri to fit comfortably. Ta built a small fire near the entrance using dry branches. The flames cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. May I? Ta asked, holding up his medical kit. He pointed to the wounds on Neri's side. The white dragon lay down, her large body curled around the cave. She stretched out her injured side toward him. Your medicines may not work on my kind, her voice said in his mind. We won't know until we try, Tay replied. He walked closer and examined the wounds. They were long cuts, as if made by claws or blades. Some were fresh, others partly healed. He took out antiseptic spray from his kit and gently cleaned the wounds. Neri flinched at first, then stayed still. He applied healing gel to the cuts and covered the worst ones with patches. Why did they attack you? Ta asked as he worked. Neri was quiet for a long time. Finally, her mental voice returned. I broke our oldest laws. I wanted our people to meet yours peacefully. And that's bad. To most Dracori, yes. For thousands of years, we have lived alone on this world. The White Ones, my kind, rule from the temples. We are said to speak for the gods. Ta moved to another wound. But you don't believe that. I believe we must grow or die. When your kind's machines first appeared in our skies, the council wanted to prepare for war. I said we should learn instead. Tai remembered his mission briefing. Earth had sent unmanned probes to Dracoris for months before his team arrived. The dragons must have seen them. So they cast you out, he said. Worse, they called me traitor. They took my voice. Ta looked up at her in confusion. Your voice, but you're talking to me. Nari's pink eyes glowed softly. Not with sounds. My people speak with mouths and minds both. They took away my sound voice with magic and science. Now I can only speak mind to mind, and only with those I touch. Tay realized that explained why he could hear her in his head. They had been in physical contact since he climbed on her back. That's why you kept chasing me, he said. You needed to touch me to talk to me. Yes, to warn you, to learn your plans. But you were hard to catch. Was that amusement in her mental voice? Tai finished treating the last wound. There, it should help them heal faster. Thank you. Nari shifted slightly, getting more comfortable. Now tell me, why did your people really come here? Tai sat down by the fire. Just what I said before. To study, to learn if our peoples could live together. You came with weapons. We come with weapons everywhere. Space is dangerous. Nari made a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. Your kind is small but brave. Or foolish, Ta said with a smile. They talked through the night. Ta told her about Earth, its many nations and peoples. Nari told him about Dracarys, the 5 great dragon clans, and the history of her people. When morning came, Tai felt strange. The more they talked, the more he could sense Nari's feelings, not just her words. It was as if a connection was growing between them. You feel it too, Nari said, noticing his confusion. What is it? The bond. It sometimes happens between Dracori who are compatible in spirit. I did not think it possible with your kind. Tai was about to ask more when they heard a sound outside the cave. Something was approaching. Nari rose to her feet, her body tense. They found us. Ta pulled out his energy pistol. The clan of Deep Waters. No. Worse. The temple guards. The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder. Ta moved to the cave entrance and looked out. 5 dragons approached. They weren't as big as Nari, but they wore metal armor painted with strange symbols. Their scales were dark red, and their eyes glowed yellow. What do they want? Tai asked. Me. And now you. Nari moved beside him. They will take us to the High Temple for judgment. Can we fly away? Nari shook her head. Look at their backs. Ta saw that each guard had a strange device strapped between their wings. What are those? Flying machines. They can follow us now. The guard stopped 50 meters from the cave. One stepped forward and roared. Ta couldn't understand, but he felt Nari's anger through their growing bond. What did he say? Tai asked. They say I must surrender and bring the alien with me. They say you have corrupted me with off-world magic. Nari's mental voice was bitter. They fear what they do not understand. Ta looked at the 5 guards, then at his small pistol with 12 shots. We can't win this fight, he said. No, but we can choose how we lose. Nari lowered her head to look Ta in the eyes. Do you trust me? Strangely, he did. Despite everything, he trusted this alien dragon he had known for barely a day. Yes, he said. Then follow my lead. And when the time comes, do something unexpected. Nari walked out of the cave, her head held high. Ta walked beside her, keeping his pistol hidden. The guards surrounded them. The leader spoke again, his voice harsh. He says we are to be taken to the High Temple for judgment. Nari translated. The council will decide our fate. They were marched across the rocky landscape toward a distant mountain. The guards kept their distance from Nari, as if afraid to touch her. Why do they fear you? Tai asked through their mental link. White scales mark the chosen ones. Even as a traitor, they dare not harm me without the council's order. Her mental voice turned thoughtful. The bond we share is growing stronger. Can you feel my thoughts without my sending them? Tai concentrated. He could sense worry, planning, and hope. A little, he said. Why? When we reach the ravine ahead, be ready. Ta saw they were approaching a deep cut in the land. A narrow stone bridge crossed it. On the other side stood a massive temple built into the mountain. It had tall towers and huge statues of dragons carved from the rock. The guards made them stop before the bridge. The leader spoke again. He says only I may cross with him. The others will take you around to the prisoner entrance. Nari's voice in his mind was urgent now. This is our chance. When I move, run to the right side of the ravine. There is a path down. Go. Without warning, Nari whipped her tail around, knocking 2 guards off their feet. She roared and breathed a stream of blue fire at the others, not hitting them, but forcing them back. Tay ran. He found the path and scrambled down the steep slope into the ravine. Behind him, he heard roars and the sound of fighting. He reached the bottom and looked up. Nari was fighting all 5 guards at once. Despite her size and strength, they were trained warriors. One slashed her side, opening a fresh wound. Tai raised his pistol and fired at the guard who had hurt Nari. The energy bolt hit the dragon's armor, making it stumble back. The guards noticed him. 2 of them activated their flying machines and leaped off the edge, coming straight for him. Tai fired again, hitting one of the flying devices. It sparked and failed, sending the guard tumbling into the ravine with a roar of fear. The second guard landed in front of Tai, its yellow eyes blazing with hatred. It opened its mouth to breathe fire. Tai dove to the side as flames scorched the ground where he had stood. He rolled and fired 3 quick shots at the guard's head. The third shot hit its eye, and the dragon fell with a terrible cry. Above, Nari was losing her fight. 3 guards had her pinned down. Nari, Tai shouted. Through their bond, he sent her his feelings. Concern, fear for her, determination. He felt her response. A plan, an image of what she needed him to do. Tai ran to the fallen guard and grabbed its flying device. Following the mental instructions from Nari, he strapped it to his back and activated it. The machine hummed to life, lifting him off the ground. With shaky control, he flew up toward the battle. The guards were so focused on holding Nari down that they didn't see him coming. Tai fired his remaining shots at them, forcing them to scatter. He landed beside Nari, who was bleeding from several new wounds. Together, her voice said in his mind. Somehow, Tai knew exactly what to do. As if they had trained for years, he and Nari moved as one. She provided power and size. He provided speed and precision. One by one, the remaining guards fell back, injured or unconscious. The last one fled across the bridge toward the temple. He will bring more, Nari said, breathing hard. We must go. Tai looked at her wounds. You're hurt badly. I will heal. She lowered her body. Climb on. We can still escape. As Tai moved to mount, Nari suddenly collapsed. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her side with a groan that Tai felt in his mind more than heard. Nari. He ran to her head. Her pink eyes were cloudy with pain. Poison, she said. The guard's claws. Temple secret. Through their bond, Tai felt her pain, her struggle to breathe. She was dying. No, he said. Tell me what to do. There must be a cure. In the temple, sacred pool, but we cannot reach it now. Tai looked at the temple across the bridge. He could see figures rushing out, more guards coming. He made his decision. Yes, we can. Tai strapped the flying device more securely to his back. He touched Nari's head gently. I'll get the cure, he said. Hold on. Through their bond, he felt her fear, not for herself, but for him. Too dangerous, her weak voice said in his mind. The high priest will kill you. Then I won't let him catch me. Tai smiled. I'm harder to catch than you think. He activated the flying device and rose into the air. It was strange to fly without wings, but he was learning quickly. He flew across the ravine, staying low to avoid being seen. On the other side, he landed behind some large rocks near the temple. He could hear dragons roaring orders and the sound of many feet moving. "Where is the sacred pool?" he asked Neri through their bond. The connection was weaker with distance, but he felt her sending an image, a round room with a blue glowing pool in the center. It was deep in the temple, past many guards. "The water is silver blue," her voice whispered in his mind. "One small cup will be enough." Ta looked at the temple. The main entrance was guarded by 6 large dragons in armor. But on the side, he saw smaller doors where dragons were rushing in and out carrying things. He flew to the side of the temple and waited. When no one was looking, he slipped inside through a small door. He found himself in a storage room filled with strange objects and barrels. The temple halls were huge, built for dragons much larger than humans. Ta moved carefully, hiding whenever he heard footsteps. Through his bond with Neri, he could feel which way to go. It was like having a map in his mind. He passed rooms filled with treasures, rooms where dragons studied old scrolls, and rooms where young dragons were learning to breathe fire. Always, he moved deeper into the mountain. Finally, after nearly an hour of sneaking, he reached a large door made of metal with strange symbols. 2 guards stood outside. Ta couldn't get past them unseen. He needed a distraction. He looked around and saw a torch on the wall. He grabbed it and ran to a nearby room filled with colorful cloths. He threw the torch onto the cloths and ran back to hide. The cloths caught fire quickly. Smoke filled the hallway. The guards roared in alarm and ran to fight the fire. Tay rushed to the metal door and pushed it open. Inside was exactly what Neri had shown him. A round room with a pool of glowing silver blue water in the center. The light from the pool made patterns on the walls and ceiling. He ran to the edge of the pool. The water glowed brighter as he approached, as if it were alive. He knelt and reached for it. "Stop," a deep voice commanded. Ta looked up. On the other side of the pool stood a dragon unlike any he had seen before. It was old, its scales a faded gray. It wore golden ornaments and a cape of blue fabric. Its eyes were white, without pupils. "The high priest," Ta whispered, remembering Neri's warning. "Human," the old dragon said, speaking not with its mouth but directly into Ta's mind. "You dare enter the most sacred place on Dracarys." "I need the water," Ta said. "Neri is dying." The high priest tilted his head. "You speak her true name. You share her thoughts." His white eyes narrowed. "The bond. Impossible." "It's real," Ta said. "And if you don't let me take some water to her, she will die." "Perhaps that is the will of the gods," the priest said. "She broke our oldest laws." Ta stood up straight. "She tried to save your people from a war they can't win. Humans have weapons that could destroy this entire planet. She knew that. She wanted peace." The priest was silent for a moment. "Even if what you say is true, the law is the law. No outsider may touch the sacred waters." Ta felt Neri's presence in his mind growing weaker. He didn't have time to argue. "Then stop me," he said, and plunged his hand into the pool. The water felt both hot and cold at once. It clung to his skin like it wanted to be taken. He grabbed a small metal cup from the edge of the pool and filled it. The high priest did not move to stop him. He simply watched with his white eyes. "You truly care for her," the priest said, sounding surprised. "And she for you." "Yes," Ta said, securing the cup of water. "Now I'm leaving, and you're not going to stop me." The priest raised a clawed hand. "If you leave with the sacred water, you bind yourself to our world forever. The water connects all things. Do you understand what that means, human?" Ta didn't fully understand, but he didn't care. "I just want to save her." "Then go," the priest said. "What happens after will be as the gods will it." Ta didn't wait to hear more. He ran from the room, past the guards who were still fighting the fire, and back the way he had come. The cup of glowing water lit his way through the dark halls. When he reached the side door, he activated the flying device and shot into the air. Dragons below saw him and roared, but he was already flying across the ravine. He landed beside Neri. She was barely breathing, her white scales turning gray. He knelt by her head and gently lifted it. "Neri," he said, "I have the water. Drink." Her pink eyes opened slightly. Through their bond, he felt her surprise and gratitude. Ta poured the glowing water into her mouth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Neri's body began to glow with the same silver-blue light. The light spread from her throat to the rest of her body, gathering at her wounds. She gasped, her eyes opening wide. The wounds closed before Ta's eyes. The gray color faded from her scales, leaving them white and shining again. Neri raised her head and looked at Ta with clear eyes. "You went into the sacred chamber," she said in his mind. "No outsider has ever done that, and lived." "The high priest let me go," Ta said. "He was strange. He saw the bond," Neri said. "He understood what it means." "And what does it mean?" Ta asked. Before Neri could answer, they heard wings above them. They looked up to see many dragons circling. The temple guards had returned, and with them came larger dragons with brightly colored scales and golden armor. "The council," Neri said, rising to her feet. "The highest leaders of all Dracori." The dragons landed around them, forming a circle. Ta stood beside Neri, ready to fight if needed, though he knew they couldn't win against so many. A large blue dragon stepped forward. It wore a crown of gold and gems. "Neri of the Eastern Territories," it said in a voice that Ta could hear both with his ears and in his mind. "You stand accused of treason against your kind." Neri raised her head proudly. "I stand for the future of our kind, Elderkin. And you, human," the blue dragon said, turning to Ta. "You have taken sacred water and invaded our most holy place. To save her life," Ta said, "I would do it again." The blue dragon looked at them both for a long moment. "The high priest has told us of the bond you share. Such a thing has never happened with an off-worlder." The other council members murmured among themselves, some sounding angry, others curious. "There is an old prophecy," the blue dragon continued, "that when the White One bonds with a star traveler, great change will come to Dracoris." He looked at Neri. "Is this why you sought the humans? You knew of this prophecy." "I sought them because it was right," Neri said. "The prophecy is for those who need such things to accept what must be." The council talked more, their voices rising and falling. Finally, the blue dragon raised a wing for silence. "The council has decided," he said. "Neri of the Eastern Territories, your punishment is lifted. You will speak for your kind to the humans, and you, human, will speak for your kind to us." Ta looked at the dragon in surprise. "Me? I'm just a soldier. I don't speak for Earth." "You do now," the blue dragon said. "The sacred water has marked you. You are bound to Dracoris as surely as Neri is bound to you." Neri turned to face Ta. Through their bond, he felt her happiness and hope for the future. She lowered her massive body until her head was level with his. Then, to the shock of all the dragons watching, she bowed her head to the ground at his feet. "What are you doing?" Ta asked, embarrassed. "Showing them that the future belongs to those who can put aside pride," she said in his mind. "Kneel with me, Ta. Show them we are equals." Understanding, Ta knelt on the ground in front of her. He placed his hand on her head gently. The watching dragons murmured in amazement. Never had they seen one of the royal white dragons bow to anyone, let alone an off-worlder. And never had they seen an off-worlder show such respect in return. "A new beginning," Neri said, raising her head to look at Ta. "For both our peoples." Above them, a ship appeared in the sky, an Earth ship, coming to find their lost soldier. But Ta knew he was no longer lost. He had found his place, beside a white dragon who had once hunted him across an alien world, and now knelt with him as an equal ready to build a bridge between two species among the stars.